Evening, everyone. I'm Summerlee Walter, the Communications Coordinator for the Episcopal Diocese of North Carolina, and I'm here with Chuck Till, our Secretary of Convention, who is going to be doing a little orientation and go through the special rule of order that we have for our March drive-in convention. A couple things are different. Obviously, the big one that we're driving in and not getting out of our vehicles, but that does have a couple of additional effects. And so Chuck will be walking us through all of that to make sure that everyone is prepared when we gather in March. So Chuck, I will turn it over to you. Thank you all for being with us.
All right, good evening and thank you everyone. And let me just get my screen share started here. Okay, Summerlee, do we have this slide?
Yep, it looks good.
All right, my name is Chuck Till. I live in Raleigh. I'm a layperson and a member of Church of the Nativity, and I've been Secretary of Convention for several years now. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, it's as simple as emailing secretary@episdionc.org, which is the diocesan domain name. There are a couple of things that we want to remind people about the convention. First of all, if you did RSVP and a large number of people RSVP'd, please do show up. It's very important for us to get a quorum in both the lay order and the clergy order. If we don't have a quorum, then the primary purpose of this convention, which is to pass legislation that would allow a subsequent convention to be handled by teleconference, won't be possible. So at this point, we got enough RSVPs to have a quorum, but we didn't get a lot more than what we need for a quorum. So that's why we're emphasizing for people to show up. Also, and you may be tired of hearing us say this, but I'll have to say it again, please stay in your vehicle while you're at the convention. Although we are meeting in a parking lot of the Friday Center at UNC Chapel Hill, the Friday Center buildings themselves will not be open. And our agreement with UNC Chapel Hill is that we will not have people milling around the parking lot. Also, a few travel tips. Reminder that take advantage of rest facilities for personal comfort, especially before you arrive. There won't be anything available on site in the way of water, snacks, and so on, nor have we made any provisions for people to leave and re-enter during the convention. So, bring a bottle of water or something like that if you need it. We know that particularly if the weather is cold, some folks are going to have to run their automobiles to stay warm. Just be sure that when you arrive at convention that you're not empty on gas, or if you're driving an electric vehicle, that it's not right on the edge of depleting the battery. And finally, again, if the weather's cold, dress warmly so that you don't have to leave your vehicle running too much. That's for environmental reasons. So what makes this 205th convention different from every convention we've had in the past? Well, there are a number of constraints on us. In order to get people in and out of this convention, we're aiming for a 30-minute business session and an abbreviated time for the Holy Eucharist. Obviously, we're not allowing people to move around. The communication will be one way from the dais to clergy and delegates. There's not really an opportunity for there to be a back channel. There's no such thing in this convention as microphones in the aisle. Furthermore, because we're in a parking lot and the dais is just set up in a tent that's with tables on the asphalt, not very many people are going to be able to see the dais. There won't be the customary screens. So we've thought about how to conduct convention in a way that most of the action, unfortunately, is hidden from view. and we're not sure what the weather is going to be. I will say that if it rains, we're doing it. If it's snow and ice, then stay tuned and there'll be an announcement the day before. But it's our intention to plow through this if at all possible. So all these constraints lead to two consequences. One of them is that the agenda is very tight. Let me dismiss this. Only the necessities, and that we're adopting some special rules. And those are really the things I want to talk about tonight. This is the overhead view of the place where we'll be meeting. Up here in the very corner is Highway 54 that runs between Chapel Hill and Research Triangle Park. The yellow pathway indicates how you enter the facility. The green area is the parking lot. As you can see, that's a really large parking lot. More than enough capacity to hold all our cars. The red X's mark places where we don't want you to go. The parking lots of the Friday Center to the left and to the rear of the building are off limits. And we also don't want people parking in the Courtyard by Marriott Hotel, which is on the other side of Friday Center Drive from the park and ride lot. So there'll be signs all over Highway 54. We don't think it's going to be possible for you to get mislaid, but just be sure to look for Friday Center Drive and then follow the signs to the Episcopal Convention at the Friday Center Park and Ride lot. And here's a zoomed in area of that lot. The dais will be over on the the west side. And there's a loop through there where normally Chapel Hill Transit buses come through and pick up people. And that's where our credentials tent will be set up. So if you do not receive a credential in the mail, I got mine today, or if there's a last minute change and you're an alternate appearing in somebody else, you'll have to go to the credentials tent to get that sorted out. And after the credentials team has taken care of you, then you'll be able to go back and park like everyone else. So on your way in, follow the signs from 54. As you're entering the area, you can turn on your car radio to one of the two FM stations, English or Spanish. I would caution you that the signal does not extend very far out the parking lot. So if you get off of I-40, for example, at Highway 54, don't expect to be able to hear the radio station 2 miles away. But once you get within a quarter mile, you should be able to hear it. There will be parking lot folks who direct you to a parking place. So please park where they tell you to, because we're going to be packing the cars in to make sure that we get full occupancy. And then after you've parked, you'll roll down your vehicle window slightly and you'll pass the credential through the slit to the attendant, who in turn will give you a host for Holy Communion. And that'll be in a sealed bag. The credentials, the attendants all wearing gloves. This has been carefully thought through to maintain personal safety. During the convention, obviously listen to the FM broadcast. We hope that you will have installed the YAP app on your smartphone, where you'll be able to get the materials. There is cellular connectivity in the parking lot. There's a cell tower right by the parking lot. Or you may print the materials yourself before you leave home. Please remain in your vehicle and keep your engine off as much as you can. And when the time comes to receive communion, you will use that host that you've received, or you may make a spiritual communion if you prefer. And then after we adjourn, the parking lot attendants will empty the lot in an organized manner. The dais is under a 3-sided tent. We are maintaining social distancing. The customary 5 people will be there: Bishop Sam, Bishop Ann, Martha Alexander, the chair of the Committee on Dispatch, Ed Enbury, the parliamentarian, and myself. And there'll be a podium next door to it. But unfortunately, only the folks who are seated or parked in the first few rows are going to be able to see that. So what's the sequence of events? First will be the announcement of the quorum in both the clergy and the lay order, we hope. The bishop will appoint a parliamentarian, and the first vote will be on adopting an agenda and special rules. We'll be voting by car horn, as you probably heard. I'll then give a very brief report on Rule 3 and Canon 18.4. This concerns churches' ability to be represented with vote. The bishop will make the usual set of nominations. You will vote on whether to elect or confirm those. The bishop will announce certain other appointments. I suspect he'll just make a reference to where you can find them in the Yap app. There will be a motion made by the Reverend Jamon Taylor, president of the Standing Committee, to affirm the budget and the 2022 fair share that have already been adopted by council. So you'll vote on that. Jamon will also move to affirm the way that Standing Committee and Diocesan Council have already filled their vacant positions. That'll be a vote. And then we start the 8 resolutions. The first 2 resolutions are constitutional amendments. They'll have to be voted on individually, and those, as you're probably familiar, are vote by orders, where the clergy vote and then the lay people vote. And then the other 6 resolutions will be moved en banc, which means all at once, and there'll be a single vote on those. The Reverend John Talk, chair of the Commission on Constitution and Canons, had a webinar night before last where he went through those 8 resolutions in detail. They're also posted on the diocesan website, and they're available in the Yap app. Those 8 resolutions are really the core of the business of convention. And then we will have the liturgy of the table and communion for Holy Eucharist. Talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The final item of business, I'll make a motion that will propose a date and place for the 206th convention. And as usual, there'll be a vote on whether to adopt that motion. Of course, this is scheduled for November of this year. And we certainly hope and pray that the pandemic will have abated enough, if not completely, enough that we could have a 206th convention at the usual place, face-to-face in Winston-Salem. However, no one can be certain of that, and that's the reason that we're adopting these resolutions 205.2 to 205.8, is to allow for the possibility that we have to do the 206th convention by Zoom. And then we'll adjourn. And as we say, we hope to get this whole thing done in 45 minutes, including the Holy Eucharist. How will you vote? Well, there are no elections this year, so all the votes are either yes or no. When you're prompted, blow your horn. And remember that 2 of the votes will be by orders. We have tried very much to have transparency on these 8 resolutions. We're not aware of any misgivings or opposition to them. So we don't think there will be any close votes, but if necessary, we will get out there and walk the parking lot and count headlights. The Holy Eucharist, the Liturgy of the Word is being pre-recorded, the introduction by Bishop Ann, and then the sermon and address by Bishop Sam. It's being pre-recorded at, I believe, St. Philip's Church in Durham. That will be made available as a podcast. You can listen to it on Friday night or early on Saturday morning, or if you prefer, you can download it and then listen to it as you drive to Chapel Hill on Saturday morning. As I've mentioned, the reserved sacrament will be given to you as you arrive. Once the last resolution, 205.8, has been taken care of, we will then play a pre-recorded liturgy of the table, again, recorded at St. Philip's in Durham. And at the appropriate moment, you'll be offered the time to partake of the host that you received, which, as I mentioned, was consecrated beforehand. So a number of special rules for this convention that reflect the constraints we're under. Diocesan Council and Standing Committee have already been elected by those respective bodies. The only other election we would normally have is a trustee for the University of the South. We're simply going to postpone that until November. It turns out that the trustees don't actually take office until October, even though we normally elect them in March. That's according to the bylaws of the University of the South. So the practical effect is there'll only be about a 6-week gap in trustees. And of course, it's only one of the 3 trustees we have. There'll be no reports. The secretary's report will take about 5 seconds. All the other reports that you customarily hear are deemed to have been received. The 8 resolutions are not going to committee hearings. There is no committee this year. So we're deeming that those resolutions have been approved by the Convention Committee on Constitution and Canons and reported favorably for adoption. No debate, no amendments, no motions to postpone, reconsider, lay on the table, that type of stuff. So it's an immediate up or down vote when the bishop calls for it. And there's a constraint that no other matter may be brought before convention. I want to emphasize that this is not a permanent change. These special rules apply to only this convention. And when we meet again for the 206th convention, we won't be under these constraints. I will say, of course, that resolution 205.8 has a series of supplemental rules that come into play if we are having a teleconferenced convention. But those special rules are different from the ones that I'm alluding to here. With that, I will stop my screen share and ask if there are any questions that folks have. I'd be happy to try to answer them. You can type them into the chat box if you wish. Just waiting for a moment to see if we have any questions. What is the title of the conference in the YAP? I believe it's 205th Annual Convention. Are gluten-free hosts being provided? Yes, all of the hosts are gluten-free so that we don't have to have distribution of both gluten and non-gluten. Thank you, Chipper. Any other questions?
We have a couple folks who have raised their hand. I'm going to ask anyone who has raised their hand to please go ahead and type their question in. Thank you all.
The background behind me, that is Hong Kong, where I used to have to go a lot on business. It's probably, I think it's the most spectacular skyline on Earth. What you can't really see at night is that that's all set into a mountainside, and the mountain goes up 6 or 7 times higher than the tallest building, which is about 100 stories. It's beautiful, and if you watch some of the James Bond movies, you'll see them taking the ferry back and forth across the harbor. What happens if you can't receive the radio broadcast? Well, we don't want that to happen. We have multiple FM transmitters. We are assured that the parking lot will be covered. And frankly, Linda, we have no fallback in that event. YAP is asking for a YAP ID code. Summerlee, can you reply to that?
Let me look that up real quick. I want to make sure I get it correct, so give me just one moment.
Standing by while Summerlee looks that up. If you have any additional questions, feel free to type them into the chat box.
So the ID is DIONC 205.
DIONC 205. Will printing the docs received via BAP be easy? Well, actually, the docs are on the diocesan website. So if you go to the diocesan website, click on Annual Convention, all the documents are available there, so you don't have to pull them off of YAP.
And I just popped the link to the annual convention page in the chat, so you can access the link there.
Yep. So that link, I believe, was DIONC 205. Is that right?
Yes, that is the
code.
Or yeah, correct.
My spouse will be driving me to the convention, but it's not a Gallic. That's fine. You know, we're counting quorum based on the number of folks who show those credentials, so no problem there. I'll also say about that Hong Kong, you can't really tell in this, but over in this area here is the Anglican Cathedral in Hong Kong, which is a very interesting place. They have 7 or 8 services every Sunday in 2 different dialects of Chinese, in English, in one of the national languages of the Philippines, because there are a large number of Philippine permanent residents in Hong Kong. And it's not air conditioned, so it gets pretty warm in there. Any other questions? Well, thank you again for attending.
Sorry to interrupt you. We did have one question actually come in through the Q&A. Are there printouts of what you've shown us tonight?
We'll put the presentation on the diocesan website. Give us a day to do that. Explain voting. Once a measure has been moved and announced from the dais, the bishop will say something to the effect of, all those in favor, blow your car horn. And there'll be a cacophony of horns. And then he'll say, all those opposed, blow your car horn. And there might be some. And then the bishop will make a decision as to whether the yeas or nays carried the measure. Well, if you think of questions after you get off the conference tonight, feel free again to email me at secretary@episdionc.org, or you can call the diocesan office, and there's an extension for the secretary, and they'll be routed to me by means of a voicemail, and I will get back to you. Otherwise, thank you so much for your patience and your willingness to embrace this rather unusual convention, which we hope never to have to do again. And please drive safely.
Sorry, Chuck, now that you've just wrapped us up, we did have one more question come.
Okay.
How exactly are the by orders names being handled? I think that might be a question pertaining to if there is a vote by orders. Carolyn, if I'm misinterpreting you, please feel free to type a correction.
So in a vote by orders, the concept is that a measure must be adopted by a majority of the clergy and by a majority of the lay delegates. Votes by order are mandated for amendments to the diocesan constitution. They occasionally come up in other situations. Thinking back over the last 20 conventions I've been to, I can think of a handful of votes by order. But they most often arise in a constitutional amendment. And frankly, offhand, I forget whether it's the clergy who vote first or the lay who vote first. But if the measure loses in that order, there's no point in having the vote in the other order. But assuming it's approved in the first order, then it goes in the second. Now, we go by the honor system that only clergy are supposed to blow their car horn when the clergy vote is called for, and only lay people are supposed to blow their car horn when the lay vote is called for.
Now I think that was all the questions.
Did that answer the question?
I think that got to it. Yeah. I haven't seen an additional message from Carolyn, so I think we're good.
All right. Well, again, thanks everyone, and the Lord be with you.